Madam Chair, you were quoted in a New Yorker profile this week saying that while the economy is improving from the depths of the financial crisis and the Great Recession, that, quote, the headwinds are still there. And even when the headwinds have diminished to the point where the economy is finally back on track and it's where we want it to be, it's still going to require an unusually accommodative monetary policy. That was your statement. And that seems pretty consistent with the concern of prominent economists outside of the Fed that current economic conditions and fiscal policy are producing an environment that requires lower than normal interest rates to generate economic growth and create jobs. Can you explain to me what you mean about the need for, quote, unusually accommodative monetary policy, and do you agree with the views being discussed by many, that Larry Summers and others, about lower than normal interest rates and the dangers of tightening too soon?
So, I mean, I do agree with the view that there are substantial headwinds facing the economy. One example would be that we see in surveys of households that their expectations about their future finances and growth in their real incomes are exceptionally depressed. And I think that's a factor that is depressing spending. We see in the housing market where we had some progress, but it now looks like it's stalled. A lack of credit availability for anyone who has anything other than a pristine credit rating, I think remains a factor, and that's in many ways, in complicated ways, a legacy of what we've lived through. So I think there are, and fiscal policy has been a factor, in my view, holding back the recovery. And that's what monetary policy has had to counteract, and that's in part why we have needed such an accommodative monetary policy for so long. Now, the economy is making progress. I do believe it's making progress, and eventually, if we continue, a day will come when I think it will be appropriate to begin to raise our target for the federal funds rate. But to the extent that even when the economy gets back on track, it doesn't mean that these headwinds will have completely disappeared. And in addition to that, productivity growth is rather low. At least that may not be a permanent state of affairs, but it's certainly something that we've seen in the aftermath. Well, we've seen it during most of the recovery. That's a factor that I think is suppressing business investment and will work for some time to hold interest rates down. These concerns and these factors are related to what economists are discussing, including secular stagnation. The committee, you know, when it thinks about what is normal in the longer run, the committee has recently slightly reduced their estimates of what will be normal in the longer run. It's the median view on that is now something around the 3 3/4%, but we don't really know. But it's the same factors that are making the committee feel that it will be appropriate to raise rates only gradually. There's some of the same factors that figure in the secular stagnation.
Let me ask you, beyond what the Fed is doing, are there fiscal policy steps that Congress can take to improve the situation and reduce the headwinds against growth? For example, we have interest rates at near historic lows, and construction employment is still below the pre-crisis levels. For example, wouldn't it be time to invest in repairing our nation's transportation and other infrastructure as a way to help against such headwinds?
Well, as I've said, fiscal policy for a number of years has been a drag on growth, and that is, we can translate that into a factor that has necessitated lower than normal interest rates to get the economy moving back on track. And of course, it's a judgment for Congress what the appropriate priorities are, but I would certainly say that fiscal policy has been unusually tight for a period like we've lived through.
And if, I understand that you don't want to dictate what Congress's priorities are, but if in fact Congress were to say, well, investing in significantly, robustly in our transportation infrastructure and other similar infrastructure projects, would that be something that would help against the headwinds?
Well, certainly it would be a counter to those headwinds, yes.
Thank you.